Wow. Hi, you guys. Rebecca here, Sirius Blue, and welcome to a pretty unusual offering on my channel. I'm just offering this to the highest light, all that is coming up next, and that I will share. I make an offering to the timeline of light now. That's one of the reasons I'm coming forward with this material now, sort of in cooperation with things around the planet, collaboration with, again, that timeline of light. So bringing light to everything I'm going to talk about today and offering that to the greater good. Yeah, so thanks for being with me. Coming out of hiding today in a variety of ways. And the first one being that I'm obviously on video, which is not necessarily my favorite place to be at all. I am a bit of a hider, and off camera is perfect. So, but I really wanted to come in today and offer, like, really direct from my heart something. I mean, obviously things that are as yet undisclosed about my life and pretty difficult for me to talk about. So, as in all of my recordings, probably going a bit slow here. And if there's pauses while I'm gathering myself, just hold my hand. Just hold my hand. I'm really scared right now. I'm nervous, very nervous, which is funny because I'm just sitting alone in my house recording with no one on the other end at the moment, but I know there will be people on the other end. Today's Thursday, and Sunday night, I was crying late at night on my floor with a lot of that pain of aloneness rising inside of me for the umpteenth, maybe the millionth time. And in that moment, I knew it's like my higher self was speaking, saying, you have to go public now. You can't wait another minute. In the time around the planet now is really on for us to, pun intended, unmask, and to reveal our most authentic self. Again, to further that timeline of light, instead of the timeline of darkness, which is really being promoted right now. So I can't say enough that I offer this to the timeline of light, bringing light. And that includes to my own personal darkness. So it took me, I guess, apparently 3 days to kind of work through the emotional charge of realizing what I was doing. Like, I can't go back. Once I'd made the decision, I knew I was on. And there's actually a lot of happiness in that for me. It's way overdue. It's like I've been carrying this burden for way too long by myself. And it's costing me in every area of my life. I can't afford the cost of that anymore. I can't do it anymore. Yeah, and here we go. I knew that loud and clear. You know, that's what my psyche and my soma were saying to me Sunday. This is enough. I can't go on like this. So I am bringing light to my own life by revealing these things at last and coming out of hiding. I've lived a lot of my life in hiding, very shy, very, wanting to stay in the shadow, and yet not. I know that's not helpful to me. I know it's harmful. I know that's destroying me. And what I realized too on Sunday night in my little heap of tears was that really stunning realization was that in staying quiet and silent, I was cooperating with the dark agenda and the controllers. And that was one of the reasons that burned like fire in me. Like, okay, I can't, I get it, I can't. I'm just helping them out. So pitter patter. Yeah, it feels like, you know, when I closed my eyes, I was getting to press record. It was like I'm feeling my way along, you know, this dark pathway in the forest at night, and as if my eyes are closed, but there's stars overhead. You know, I'm actually fairly comfortable. I like that environment. But then abruptly the trail ends and there's just this cliff, and it's a ravine, chasm. And I know I have to just leap. That's where I am now, in the free fall with you. So again, I probably will say this a few times. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience, open mind, and holding the light with me here. So I did have to write notes. I wanted to really do this spontaneously, but I know from the past when I first started to discuss this in a group of other experiencers, I would get on the Zoom call and it would be my turn to talk. I would go blank, like couldn't remember anything. And that is kind of part of the programming, like days, not allowed to talk, not allowed to talk. So I did have to jot the old-fashioned notes on old-fashioned paper with old-fashioned pen. That's my style. Whew. And also wanting to encourage others in their personal authenticity. In my life, especially for the last, heavily for the past year and into 2 years ago, I mean, really my whole life, right? I feel like I'm in conversation with a friend or an acquaintance or somebody, and I'm talking around the biggest thing in my life and what I've been working with so diligently for so long. And it's helpful, you know, to the other person because I'm not making them uncomfortable. But at the same time, I'm telling myself that I don't matter. And that's what happens when we don't reveal our truth, is we tell ourselves we're nothing. Your story doesn't matter. Your experiences are nothing. And again, we're cooperating with wearing the mask, which is our training. So I need to get out from under that programming. And I will say too, with what I will talk about here soon, there was always a mandate that, I mean, first of all, you're not supposed to remember anything about these experiences. That's right off the bat, kind of programmed in. But should you remember, should a fluke, a fractured piece of something emerge, and then another and another and another, you're never supposed to tell. And the programming, the mind bend there is, if you tell, you will be killed. So that's pretty heavy programming to work against. And I can see why, you know, my heart would be like pounding on my chest, even though that's from child times. I mean, I'm 47 years old. This is a long time ago. I wanted to share that, you know, that the stakes are high in a certain way in the mind of the small self, the psyche, the wounded self, and the small child self. So, boy, and this relates to shadow clearing for the whole collective. Look at what's going on during this seeming pandemic. All that you notice the churning of your shadow material in the collective, wanting to rise, wanting to be cleared. That's part of what's going on now. And I know that's what's happened for me. It's like point break. Time's up. You know, I say that, you know, to myself, you can't stay hidden anymore. So I know I'm belaboring that point, but it's been a huge player in my life, and why I haven't been more out on my channel or out on my, I don't really heavily promote my work. I kind of, you know, my clients find me word of mouth, however, you know, however they do. I don't, definitely kind of in the shadows there. And to some extent, that's okay. But I know this also has to do with everything I'm talking about, that my whole hidden life, secret programs. And this has to do with children also. So I'm giving you the overarching view of like, why now, why this now? It's personal and it's also planetary, because we are learning more and more about a huge problem in the world, which is child trafficking, child sexual abuse, pedophile rings, satanic ritual abuse, and child sacrifice. These are happening in our world, and they have been happening for millennia. And some of that, it's all rising to be cleared. It's all rising. It's all rising. And that includes me. I'm being carried on that wave, the rising tide of bringing the darkness and the very, very most degraded aspects of darkness coming into light. This is how, in part, we create that timeline of light. A lot of people, we mostly want to look at light, and that's nice, I get that, but that's not all there is. And if we're just living in love and light, and that's all, we're not looking at we have to look at the shadow material. If we're not looking at it, it doesn't just go away, it festers, and again, we're feeding the dark regime, the controllers, and we're keeping ourselves stuck. So I can't abide by that anymore. If you go to my website, you won't see me talking about anything dark, and that needs to change. It's not like I need to saturate anything with darkness. That's not what I'm saying. But as in one's personal work, let's say, bring it into the personal experience. If you're only working with what feels good to you, you're bypassing what can actually bring you healing and into higher light. So, of course, I think most of you know that, but it's like I've been towing the party line for everybody else and suffering inside because of it. So, continuing on here, I think I mentioned a little bit about why I hadn't come clean before with this. I mean, it's terrifically difficult material because it's almost so incredible. It's like it doesn't seem credible. It seems incredible. Like it's made up and it's a machination of a delusional mind. And believe me, I have thought that. I have been through so much denial and so much doubt about so much of this over a very, very, very long time. Carrying that alone, I get it. Like if this sounds insane to you, I totally understand. And one of the reasons, I mean, there's the fear of ridicule, of course, fear of losing friends, losing my family's quite small. I have one dear family member that I really don't want to lose. You know who you are, and if you're listening by some strange chance to this, don't leave me. Don't leave me. Before you throw out the material, yeah, just consider it. Just consider what if this fairy tale were true. Also the fear of, I think, losing clients, maybe because I seem crazy. So, and all of that is dealing with a small sort of small self, wounded self again, you know. I could, I'll lose followers, I'll lose fans, I'll lose, you know, unfriend me, unsubscribe, whatever. That's okay, because the cost of me living in a kind of darkness, in I won't say quite a lie, but not telling the truth is way too steep. It's way too steep. So I'm glad I arrived at that place inside. I have to be there right now. It's like not soon enough. I'm so happy. Thank you. So having a breath as I start to talk about the actual experiences of my life here. Okay, they're just reminding me that I'm bringing light because I'm afraid to talk about what comes first. I'm kind of going to bring you back into the earliest part first, and that is actually the most, I'm not going to go deeply graphic, but maybe for like a minute. I don't want to trigger anybody. It's sensitive. You know, nobody wants to look at this stuff, and I'm not going to belabor anything today. This will be hopefully like the Cliff Notes version. That's probably all I can handle today. There's so much to it and so many different satellites of story and overlay and interconnection, but I'll do my best to keep it pretty linear and coherent. So for me, going off world as a child was preceded by a certain kind of training, which is based on mind control of trauma and fracturing the mind of the very small child. And when I was an infant, a certain training began. I don't know how I call it training. It's a ritual abuse, ritual sexual abuse started in my infancy with fortunately not right in the nuclear family, not with my mother and father, but another more distant family member. Thankfully, I didn't live with that person. Yeah, very thankful. It is part of a grooming process that creates a fractured mind in a very traumatized person who is then splintered. And so for me, this was family member is a very far-right religious fanatic, Nazi worshiper, collects Nazi memorabilia in his basement, and a known white supremacist. So he's got his buddies, and you know, there's things that were done to me. I have a marker memory. This is where I get graphic. It's going to be brief, but it's to bring this into the light, and that's why I'm mentioning it, surrounding it with light, surrounding it with light, surrounding it with light. Ever since I can remember my child, first memory, one of them is of being hung with being hung in a kind of sexual torture. That's it. That's pretty much what I'm going to say there. You can uncover your ears. But that I used to have in my mind. I thought something was wrong with me, because it's like even when you're just learning to talk and you've already got this in your head, what is that? What child has that in their mind? It's not like you're seeing it on television. Where? And then I would have these nightmares that included the same image, but it was me looking at me, which is a classic sign of dissociation, dissociative disorder, when you're seeing yourself in third person. It's happening. That's what happens during the actual trauma. You split off. You cannot flee. You cannot fight. You dissociate. You're frozen. That's part of the technology. And then they can split your mind into many pieces, and the memory will not exist, not in its entirety ever. But for some reason, I had that inside of me, and it was quite disturbing to me, always has been. I didn't understand it, and I pretty much threw it away, not because I didn't understand it. And of course, anything that doesn't go along with our version of reality, we tend to throw away. We do this on a daily basis. And even just watching something like this, I get it. If you're like, this is trash, this doesn't happen. I understand that. We need to feel like our reality is somewhat predictable. And then something comes in that you can't catalog according to the status quo reality you've been given. What do we do with it? We throw it away. And pretty soon you have a lot of those things living in the trash bin. It becomes problematic. Whew. So thanks for holding my hand just there. I need to pause for a minute. There's a lot that I could go into there. You know, what is the perpetrator is deriving a certain level of high from this, and a kind of energy that's very important to certain entities that feed on the perpetrator. And that was definitely going on here. Definitely going on here. And it also breaks the child. It's a form of mind control technology. It's particularly revolving around sexual abuse that's been perfected over millennia. Quite advanced technology. These guys know exactly, and they're cooperating with the negative aliens to do this, dark entities and so forth, to carry this out. So I will probably not go further on that topic. It's a trigger. It's a big trigger, and that I can even talk about it right now without, falling apart is really a mark of enormous work that I have done. Just carrying that alone, I think from small childhood is very, carrying that sort of like something's wrong with me. I am dark, I am bad, I must have created that. Did I do that? Did I do something wrong? And that's part of the training too, with the programming of the mind. You're taught that you're implicit in guilt somehow, and so that keeps you from telling. If you think you're part of whatever ritual it was or whatever thing you did that you're bad and it's your fault, it really keeps you from talking. If you can ever get to the point where you remember enough, or you're coherent enough, and the child might not be, because they're living in an altered state. If this happens often enough, they're living in an altered state. So the front personality is relating with the world, but there's other places in the mind that are not, they're not on board, and they're heavily traumatized. These are alters. And this certain kind of programming is very useful to what comes next. And for me, that was going off world. So it seems incongruous. What would this, like the ritualized abuse of this sort, have to do with then being in sort of a space program and used as a child for other dark ends? What? It has to do with needing that mind control. They need a fractured mind to work with. And children are very pliant. They're very malleable. They're not mastered internally themselves. They always need someone telling them what to do. And that is to the advantage of the dark agenda. And the child energy is very, very pure. It's very innocent. And that's very, when they co-opt that and degrade it and use it, it's very powerful for them. And by them, I mean negative extraterrestrials and the certain factions of the deep state and the elite. So, and some of you might know, probably quite a few of you watching know this stuff, so I won't belabor that. Also, then before I get into the going off-world, this is really related. My father, who died recently, and boy, in the year 2019 leading up to his death, he had very bad cancer, and I was getting slews of information coming up from the depths of my psyche. Actually, I would go back and say in 2012, I was in quite a bad car accident. I was struck by a car and had a head injury and extreme PTSD after that happened. And I realized later what had happened is it's like rattling loose the compartments in the brain that were storing some of the memories. In some level, even though it wasn't entirely conscious at that point, saw the whole thing in that moment. You know, it's like, that's the PTSD that I was responding with post-traumatic stress disorder to events from the past, which had been tidily kept in a neat package elsewhere. And they were like shaken up. It's like if you take a stick and you kind of go to the pond and you stir up all the muck. I was terrified. I was living from stress to stress to stress and terror and panic and paranoia. And it wasn't until quite a while later I realized why and what was happening and what was actually coming up for me. Anyway, my father's a brilliant guy. Bless him. Bless him. Wherever you are in your journey, Dad, boy, let's not do this again. I'm not doing this again with you. He's a gray hybrid. And Grays harassed me a lot in childhood. I think that was part of the plan. Dad, you know, it's a long story. Maybe I'll get to that in another video. Made a deal with the Grays so they could take me, basically, and do what they wanted, which, of course, is helping get me into this off-world, strange off-world stuff. Dad also boy, Army service in the 60s, Navy Reserve 70s and 80s, working for, in civilian sector for Lockheed Martin, big player in the military industrial complex, deep state. And I did not know until the end of 2019 that actually his top secret compartmentalized clearance, he had that from the time I was born. Dad was working in black projects my entire childhood. I had no idea. I did not know that. It was interesting too, because I lived down here with him. I moved down here 3 years. I live on the Mexican border. 3 years ago, I moved here because I knew I had unfinished business with him, and this is it. Recovering my life from all of this. He did reveal more in, the months before he passed about his work, because I would kind of ask him and he enjoyed sort of talking about this and that, but I also got the sense that he was, number one, I have a suspicion that he also was in some kind of off-world program, and that they mind wiped him because he, just from some of the signs there with Dad. Wow. I remember, though, clearly talking to him one night at the house before he went into hospice, and he was talking about his Army days, and then later he said, yeah, I worked on a project called Something Ultra, and I just went, what the F? I said, Dad, you don't remember the first part? He goes, no. And I said, what were you doing? He said, I don't really remember. He said, what he said to me on multiple occasions? He said, I don't really know how I did half the things I did. And I think that's true. There's a reason for that. And I had said, because I'd seen that the Greys were also downloading him with information so he could solve his projects. He was working in R&D. They would say, hey, we have XYZ for you to figure out. We need this. Go do it. They give him a budget and send him to his cubicle. Actually, he said, he revealed to me that he worked in a cage in the basement of the facility, which I thought, I never really got clear on what the hell that was about. Anyway, things I missed about him. Yeah, I think he was being led into an altered state to sort of do his brilliant work. He's all mind, and not a lot on the emotional or social connection. Brilliant mind, like no degrees, just kind of grassroots guy, figuring his way in the dark with learning how to do things. But yes, the Greys were helping him. His family was helping him. And then while I was going through his documents and just his stuff, he lived in a little room, kind of very eccentric, kind of like me, like out of cardboard boxes. Poor Dad. I found some docs that outlined, written in his own hand, just things, not official documents at all, but just things he had written to discover how to do things, mathematical equations, and a lot of techie language, but also mentioning things about related to mass psychology, artificial implantation, and what he was calling, was it telepsychonetics or something like that? And to me, again, my jaw dropped and I was like, what the F? It sounded like psychotronics to me. If you guys in the audience aren't familiar with that, you can always Google MK Ultra or psychotronics and learn a little bit more there. Be discerning in your research. So honestly, too, I think my brother, this runs in families, I'll just say that. And I'll say that, we've gotten closer since Dad died, and we were out one night. He came down here to visit. We had a blessed visit together, and we were looking up at the stars. Hey, Venus is there, one of my favorites, blah, blah, blah. And he said, do you remember in the gifted program when they were testing us for ESP? And unbeknownst to, I didn't say, I don't talk to him about any of this. He knows I'm kind of in a weird line of work, but I don't really say anything about it. I went, oh my God. I said, no, I don't remember that, but he does. I said, what grades was that? He goes, about 3 through 6. And I went, oh, Jesus. Note taken. Anyway, let me go on into the story. I don't know how long I've been recording. I don't want us to take all day. And you guys are doing a good job holding my hand. I think it was just that first bit that was like pressing record. Whew, and trying to stay just in my heart, being true. So like I said, variety of circumstances conspired to get me off world. And before I go on, I wanted to say too that my part in this was I contracted for this. We do crazy things to learn about the experience of polarity and duality here on Earth when we come in. So basically, this was part of a chosen experience on my part. So it's not like I have at this point, after doing so much work with it, that much just, gone through my rage and confusion, and, things still come up. But I signed up for this because I realized at the soul level, it was to learn about the deepest, most degraded forms of darkness by being in the belly of the beast. That is how, as a soul, I wanted to learn about it, so then I could undo it from the inside, undo it from within the belly of the beast. How do you do that if you don't know how it operates? So I think that's part of what this lifetime was about for me. So in 3D, we could say, yes, I've been victimized, but yeah, yes and no. We sign up for all kinds of crazy things. Look at your life. What do you see? We are co-creators. We really are. Again, what the F was I thinking? God. And I'm glad there's a little humor here today as I talk about going off world to the moon facility. All right. If you're still with me, thank you. This is hard to talk about. I know I sound kooky. Okay. So going back to the trauma-based mind control, for myself, I can only speak of my own experience. Part of that was to create a certain template within the mind, the fractured mind of the child, that during a subsequent moment of trauma, not necessarily sexual, but something is triggering like a red button, pushing the red button in the mind, and it's a moment of terror or fear for myself, which is sort of like when you raise your hand and to the controllers that says, come and take me. It's kind of disturbed. It's very disturbed, but that's how it works, at least again, in my case, as I've seen it. So they take you sideways through time. If linear time is moving from point A here to point B in a straight line, I always call it sideways traveling through time, a time slip to the right or left on that linear trajectory. So you're taken out of 3D beyond space and time, gone for days, perhaps hours, days, weeks, years, and returned to the same point in time. It's kind of confusing to the linear mind, to the conceptual mind that understands A to B, point A to point B in a line. This is beyond that, and working, let's say, interdimensionally, multidimensionally. I'd love maybe talk about all of that technology in maybe a different video. I don't want this to take us all night. But on the backside of the moon, like I would go into an underground facility here on Earth, and then it's like being strapped into this really, it's like you're moving faster than the speed of light, and you end up on another underground facility, and this is in my case, on the backside of the moon, and this would have been in the 70s if we're talking about linear time. I don't think this facility is still at all operating to the capacity that it was during that time. It was huge. It was huge, and there were so many projects going on. Mind-boggling array of projects, and I'm only seeing part of it. My job as a little kid was to they wanted my mind. You're probably saying, well, why certain kids? Why certain people? You know, the makeup of my family that I've shared, that was part of it. But also having, you know, starseeds and indigos are definitely wanted. Kids with more of a proclivity toward psychic giftedness, if you like. Everybody has a capacity for development of intuition to a very high level. It's just been schooled out of us. We've been taught not to go there and taught to fear it. But anyway, as a child, that was part of what they wanted me for, was using mind-to-mind communication. Let me talk about the facility there. Hold my hand for a minute. It's an place of horrific suffering. Horrific. There are the beings running it, from what I have seen, are the infamous Greys, Draco reptilians, and humans that are aligned with some of the Nazi ideology, and many of whom seem to be, I don't know what is the word, desouled, like so tampered with that we're not quite human, and partly that is AI. There's artificial intelligence there at play, but what is hard for me to look at there is all, this is at least where I worked was in it's like a experiment, it's a laboratory, all these experiments with genetics and hybridization, cloning, creating like cyborgs, and there's tons of ETs of different races in captivity there at this time, at least when I was working there. And my job was was stealing their data in some way. You know, it's like I was harnessed under mind control, while they're either drugging or using like an alter or something in which I wouldn't remember the experience, because I'm functioning as an alter in a different compartment of the brain and experience as a child, taking their information. It's almost like befriending them and betraying them in some way. And I've really had to work with this because just the guilt of that is so horrible, like terrible. Like I'm a little kid being trained to harm other beings, not directly, wasn't directly hurting them, but I was betraying them by downloading things from them and giving them to the good guys, bad guys, the bad guys. That was a program. That was one of them. And they also, they use, they want, using my genetics and DNA to splice with other things. And it just goes off and on from, It's a lot to it from there. Yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking. And of course, I wasn't the only kid or adult being enslaved in some way there at this facility. No. I wish I could say I was unique in my experience, but I'm not, and that's a troubling part. Fortunately, like I said, I think a lot of these things had their height around 70s and 80s, and that some of it has, not all of it by any means, fallen away, and part of what's happening is these facilities are getting, I do think some of the stuff is getting cleared out during these times when we are in distracted with a apparent pandemic. So Moon was kind of another training. They don't invest all this time and energy into messing you up to just use you for one thing and throw you away. They want to use you for multiple tasks in multiple locations. So from the Moon, this particular facility, there's it's almost like opening a door. and traveling rather easily. It's like on Earth, you know, you'd say going to a bus stop and getting on the bus. Well, traveling from there to Mars. And Mars was just a war zone, it was, the word I have for it is like biotronic warfare. And a lot of what was being created as far as beings and technology on the moon, in say R&D on the moon, at the moon facility. There's facilities on Mars too, but for some reason the being experimentation was pretty heavy on the moon. And then they're testing the capacity of these beings in this war zone on Mars. This is part of it anyway. Not by any means everything that's happening on the moon or Mars. There's quite a lot to those, you know, human participation in these projects in both locations. But I'm just speaking of what I'm aware of with myself. That's all I can ever talk about is my experience. So, and it's frightening. That is, I think the war experiences are what got me so bad. I was like, I can't be silent, because again, we're coming back to the child and what's being done to children, has been done to children. The Mars arena, the battlefield arena there is so intense. It's like you come out the portal and you're like running for your life from the jump. And, you know, thinking about that adrenaline, and there's flashes and booms, and, you know, it's like I'm deposited into this space that's like, it's like a training and testing ground, but it's to our perception. And this is the first place where I actually see other people. There's humans there also with me. You're running for your life, and it's like kill or be killed. It's very strange. I mean, to our mentality here on Earth, you can't imagine that. That alone is plenty for the psyche. But again, remember, there's a lot of mind control, heavy mind control, and all kinds of stuff being done. So you're not really present, and also cloning. So that's another story. The motto there that I am told is kill or be killed. And that's so frightening. As being in this environment as a kid, and I'm watching, and now, I mean, it's so like windy and dusty there, and it's really intense. And for some reason, even though it's farther than Earth from the sun, the light is so bright, like you have to have eye protection there. There's just it's a pretty unique environment. A lot of like, I want to say like almost acid colored explosive stuff and all this. There's so much activity. It's at once, it's overstimulating for, you know, anybody really. I was working again with a mind-to-mind communication with it's like you could be sitting inside of a machine, but it's much more high-tech and multidimensional than that. And you're operating it not with controls manually, but with your mind. And the being, it's biotronic. So it's part life form, hence the consciousness aspect that I'm relating with telepathically, telekinetically, in part machine. And it's a killing machine. It's got these claws, and I'm in a total trance. You know, I was at the height of the projects here when I was about 9, and I have worked heavily with my inner, let's call them inner children. My 9-year-old and a 4-year-old, I work with them the most probably. The 9-year-old communicates with me a lot with drawings, and when she was starting to show me what it was like to be like mind controlled there, the experience of her psyche, that is, on Mars, she shows me, and she's a master draftswoman, right? 9-year-old kid, right? Her drawings are exquisite, and that's how she often tells me what's going on. She hands me a drawing, and her eyes are just these bugged out, like they're spirals. They're not even, just like there's no pupil, indicating a certain level of derangement. The drawing is just incoherent completely. It's just scribbles. It's nothing. And that's her showing the mind at that stage, that moment, beyond time and space. It's painful. That's what got me. Again, the child being co-opted to this level. When you take a child, and the child may or may not remember this, maybe we could say this is all just a simulation, this never happened, right? Something to say about that in a minute. You're destroying the whole society when you get at children in this way, and that's part of the plan. And I have communicated with the beings that are, let's say, they're kind of archonic beings, like the mind stream of who it is that's actually creating, who thinks this stuff up. And I said, what is your plan here? What are you trying to do? And they said, to create a race of total slaves. We want to destroy the human mind. And this is one timeline. We are not going there. We are not going there. But it does explain sort of what's happening there. And it's for war, development of off-world war. It's all for all kinds of things. But the deeper agenda is I think it was well said. So, just pausing again. Thank you for just holding some space and some light there. And again, as with on the moon, there's this tremendous guilt factor. Like knowing my mind beyond my capacity to control, it was used to hurt others, other beings. That's taking me some work to reconcile with, myself, I think, even though it's like, baby, you're a child. Yeah. Heartening though, how resilient the human race is actually. We are bringing this stuff to light. And we're doing that. I'm doing that by talking about it, not by pushing it away. So redeeming the children, past, present, and future. Bringing them into coherency and healing, into the warm light of all the mothers and fathers. Nurturing energy, true energy of the mothering feminine and the fathering masculine. It's coming into unity. It's all about resolving polarity as we look at these things, as we go through these very difficult experiences, this chaotic node on Earth. Bring the shadows to light and moving closer into unity and away from the polarized timeline. Good guys, bad guys, black, white, right and wrong. Coming into unity. So from Mars, there's another place that I went further into the solar system. Yeah, if you're still listening, bless you, thank you. Like I said, I've struggled with my own sanity on all of this. What I was going to say about what? How do I know any of this is true and real? I guess I don't. It's just maybe stray stuff in my head. But I was traveling living in India with a dear friend of mine for a few months in fall 2019. And there was a 3-day celebration called Diwali. And it is about vanquishing darkness and bringing in light. Celebrating the victory of light is literally what it's about. And they explode a lot of fireworks to celebrate that light. And they do it for a few days in a row. What do you think fireworks do? They activate PTSD for me. Always hated fireworks. Just, yeah. Loud blasts and colored lights and all of that. No way. No way. Um, so we'd been on a walk up into the base of the mountains there, where, because in the foothills of the Himalaya, northern India, and the fireworks were going, and I was like, I could tell I was getting into dissociative state. I was checking out and going away, and I was seeing all these burned up bodies and flames, and I was seeing a war zone. By the time we finished the walk and I went down back to the house, I was kind of a mess. I was really a mess, and I was starting to have an episode. I call them episodes. It's when I go into a somatic regressive experience, and I'm shaking, like I'm having a seizure is what I would equate it with. It's very traumatic, and during these episodes, I've had a number of them, and I'm being brought back into a different place in my life that I don't really remember, but I know that it's me, and I'm speaking in the voice of a child. And I remember he just held me while this was going on, and he was such a beautiful presence for me. I was saying, what is that burning? Is that people burning? Where am I? Who am I? I am burning. Is that me burning? And I just kept shaking. It's like the body's just shaking all this out from the cells, from the muscular memory. And eventually, after it seemed like it went on and on forever. It was well over an hour that I was in this state. I was wrecked the whole next day. That happens when that amount of information is coming up from the depths of the being, my being. But to me, I've always been like, holy shit, you cannot make that up. The body is always telling the truth. The body holds our experiences. And they cannot mind wipe that out of you. So it was shocking what happened that night, like really. So we are finely tuned instruments, let's say that, responding to our environment all the time, in both, to negative aspects or triggering aspects of the environment, or very, the light around us is so big, so big, so big. Yeah. I know I'm ready to fully receive more light in my life. I've certainly had a difficult time receiving. I can bring the light and love to other people all day, all night, but there's a part of me that feels like I don't deserve it. And even though in my adult mind I know that's trash, logically I know that, but so much negative programming, and I've undone a lot of it, and I think more and more is falling away with my father's death. Is releasing a lot of things. So thank you so much for being with me. There's so much I didn't cover. Of course, this is so layered and detailed, and I didn't share that much detail today, but there's so much to it. It may or may not be that interesting to you. If you are wanting to know more about this, any particular element of it, maybe you could leave a comment and let me know about that. Oh, wow. You guys are such a blessing to me, too. And if there's any way what I've been through can help you, if you want to work with me, please contact me. I've already, we're always transmitting our field. Through our field, our energetics, our vibration, we're transmitting exactly what's true for us, even if we're not giving it words. So I've had, even though I haven't gone public about this before, I've had plenty of people coming toward me like magnetized. So I know it's part of my bigger purpose is helping other people who have been through some aspect of this. And again, I offer and dedicate the let's say the merit, the light of what has come through today to anybody, any being in any realm. I don't care who it is. May they receive healing and light from this too. May the dark receive light. May they be liberated from bondage. Anytime there's a individual perpetrator, someone committing trauma, it's because they too have been traumatized. Our world runs on trauma. Look at what's going on in the world right now. People are very, very traumatized. Their fear is feeding timeline that we really don't want to manifest. So sending light to all beings and looking at the much bigger picture of all this, my own contract, which has since been, that's been cleared for quite a while, but also understanding the nature of trauma. Trauma begets trauma. So let it stop with me. Let it stop with me. And bringing light. Lanishne mokashni dasho kanimalitor gatoshi makasho kimiknishna ni labona marete tema vutalish ni nala kana tuna bushne ni la honi bash ni la khani biara tuni bati li tayla khalakati ti na qamakban bili Allah dato shantalanto shimagilato kulahi ni lawan. Oh, may you leave here with more light in your third eye, more ability to see, more ability to refresh your heart with light. It's beautiful. All right. Now, I have to share this with you guys. You've been with me for quite a while now. This is too far out. I found this like last week in my dad's stuff. It was something you might notice that I've had a long art career. It's really been on hold. But this guy, I made this. I mean, what does that look like to you? Tall gray. Looks like it to me. I do not have a memory of making this. It was when I was 19 years old. My dad had it says Rebecca, 91. Yeah, there's a few of these. Most of them were a lot bigger and they're all very disturbed, and they all were my subconscious telling me about all of this. Seriously. Wow. You cannot make that up. And again, my jaw dropped and I said, what the F is that? Yeah. So there I handed my father a gray. Can't make this shit up, man. So thank you. I'm glad we are landing on a note of light. And thanks for listening all the way through. Bless you and bless us all into the timeline of light.